Hello and welcome to Hysteria. I'm Alyssa Mastromonaco.
And I'm Errin Haines.
That's right. The next in our summer lineup of co-hosts is another fabulous Erin, but this one's spelled with 2 R's, and she's the editor-at-large for the 19th News. She's the host of their podcast, The Amendment, and she writes a bi-weekly newsletter with the same name. So Erin, now that we have you here, I need to ask you a very important question. It's being covered by CNN, USA Today, Fox News, The Guardian, Men's Health, NBC.
What are we talking about?
No, I'm not talking about the Justin Timberlake DWI.
Yeah. Also following.
Are you following the hot rodent men trend?
Sadly, yes, I've fallen down this rabbit hole. Yes.
How can you not?
Indeed. How can you not?
So, Erin, people are just saying that the hottest men right now resemble various rodents.
What does that say about us as a society? Is that where we are?
I'm not sure, but here's the thing. At first, I was like, this is nonsense. But then they're like, Timothée Chalamet, a mouse. And I was like, shit, he is very adorable and a mouse.
We will never look at them the same again. Adam Driver, I thought he was hot, but I was not associating his hotness with any sort of rodent qualities. And I don't want to. I don't want to. And now I can't go back because this has been put out into the universe for me. So thanks, media.
Thank you, media. Welcome back to Hysteria, the podcast for fans of the 19th Amendment.
Exactly.
Okay. So listen, in case you missed it, listeners, little more SCOTUS news on mifepristone. So there was big breaking news that, of course, dropped after we recorded our episode last week, and I want to run through a little bit. First, we can't help but be a little suspicious over the fact that SCOTUS last Thursday unanimously voted to dismiss the lawsuit that sought to limit access to mifepristone, a very common and safe abortion drug used in almost 2/3 of abortions in the U.S. In case you forgot, the case, also known as the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine versus the FDA, saw the plaintiff challenging the legal standing of the FDA to expand access to mifepristone. So, Erin, what does this mean? Is Samuel Alito now all of a sudden a pro-choice warrior?
Let's not get crazy, Alyssa.
Okay, just want to make sure.
No. By no means is this kind of unanimous decision somehow an endorsement of protection of abortion care by this Supreme Court. I think what the takeaway here for us needs to be is that this is not them necessarily saying mifepristone is cool, right? I definitely don't think that's the takeaway here, but I think that what the court was saying was that, these plaintiffs here just did not have standing. According to Vox, the court's decision was pretty narrow.
Right.
That opinion was really much more concerned with the nature of the lawsuit that was brought to the court versus the actual substance of the argument, right? So the plaintiffs, the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine was not really able to show how they were personally injured by the FDA, right, in this case. So what I think, SCOTUS may be kind of signaling to folks who are, maybe looking to get rid of mifepristone, go back to the drawing board, right? But
get
yeah,
a better case.
Absolutely. But by no means should this be interpreted as like some kind of sign that SCOTUS is somehow softening on restrictions to reproductive care.
Right, and we still have more opinions to hear before the end of June.
Yeah, it's a sprint to the finish.
It is a sprint to the finish, and while this one also for people who are online being like, maybe this is good news for the EMTALA case. I would not conflate anything.
Sure. And mifepristone safe for now, but that's not to say that we will not see another mifepristone case before this court at some point.
Oh, yikes. Okay, also last week, weird shit going on in Arkansas. Yeah. So Sam B and I, as we were getting on the air last week, we talked a little bit about the intimidation tactics currently being used by anti-abortion activists in Arkansas to ultimately try and prevent a state abortion amendment from making the ballot box. Now, I want to dive a little deeper. Last week, we kind of knew it happened, but we didn't know much more. So the 19th talked about how this Arkansas issue highlights the broader safety risks for abortion organizers throughout the country. Organizers who are mostly women.
Yeah.
As a refresher, according to the 19th, this measure would amend the state constitution to prohibit laws or policies restricting abortion access within 18 weeks from conception, or in the cases of rape, incest, or fatal fetal anomaly, or when abortion is needed to protect the life or health of the mother. So, Erin, what is the 19th's new reporting on this? What's happening in Arkansas and to the activists?
Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for highlighting our reporting. That's from Barbara Rodriguez, who really is monitoring a lot of what is happening on the ground in Arkansas I think what this really highlights is the broader issue of what it means for women in this moment to really be participating in our politics, and how political violence, threats of intimidation, harassment, or worse, are really, sadly, becoming part of what comes with trying to participate in our democracy. I think about even, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, those poll workers.
Absolutely.
We know the threat to poll workers already, and now we're learning that these organizers for this abortion ballot measure in Arkansas are facing similar threats. So according to our reporting, one woman said she'd been called a murderer at public events, and another woman said she was followed by a protester from location to location, and then a third just really stopped posting publicly about her real-time whereabouts because she was concerned about her safety. So this is something that organizers are saying has been escalating, especially in the last 4 to 6 weeks. And we know that these abortion ballot measures have been successful when they have been able to get on the ballot and been put in front of voters. So, to the extent that folks do not want these abortion ballot measures to happen, political intimidation is a means, part of the strategy now to try to prevent these ballot initiatives from getting on the ballot. And that it's just really unfortunate, and it says a lot, I think, about where our politics are today. And it's important to pay attention to what's happening in Arkansas right now.
It is important to pay attention to what's happening in Arkansas. And also it makes me think about how people of a specific party or a specific position, in this case, the anti-abortion activists, the will of the people doesn't mean anything to them. Why wouldn't you want it on the ballot? Yeah. Go ahead and organize your people. Get them out to vote. Vote it down.
Yeah.
But the fact that now, when people don't get their way, even if you, to me, it is just a shocking thing to think about. If 70% of the people in my community voted for something, I think kind of no matter what it was, I'd be like, all right, well, this is where I live and this is what the people wanted.
Yeah.
But Ohio is a great example of it passing constitutional amendment. And now every elected official who's a Republican in Ohio is trying to be like, well, there are exceptions, or this is not exactly what it meant to try to make abortion and reproductive rights a fundamental right of women in Ohio. And it's like, dude, it passed by 57%.
Yeah. And just because, folks not liking the outcome or trying to prevent a certain outcome, it shouldn't mean that everything is on the table to try, as a means to preventing that outcome. It really speaks to, a question of whether, we're going to have respect for the democratic process,
right?
Small d democratic process, right?
Right.
Whatever that is, however that plays out, trying to influence that, especially by intimidating or harassing people and in a way that's gendered, that's not cool.
No, and it's this is a trite story, but I have to share it. Back in 2004, when I was working on the Kerry campaign, and we lost famously 2004 to George Bush.
Yeah.
I got home to Washington D.C. I had been in Boston, and I come home and someone had hit my car.
Oh,
right, my car. The headlights are smashed in.
Insult to injury.
Oh, so someone leaves a note, and they're like, "Hey, I hit your car. Here's my number." So I go to call the number, and the voicemail I get is, "Hi, I'm celebrating another 4 years of George Bush. Leave a message." And I was like, you know what? I don't want her money. I just go do you. I just kind of wish that we could do a little bit more of that, I guess. Not like I'm some fucking hero, but I don't know. I just feel like if democracy ebbs and flows, but if we don't actually respect the outcomes of our democracy, it feels like we're in a lot of trouble.
Do better.
Do better.
That's all I got.
Speaking of doing better, oh lordy. Okay, so you remember earlier this year when Alabama banned IVF?
Oh yeah.
And the conservatives like Katie Britt and Ted Cruz, they were kind of like, record scratch, might have gone too far, and they made feeble attempts to try to protect IVF.
Yeah.
Well, that's all gone to shit. True colors coming out. Last week, Senate Republicans blocked legislation that would make IVF and other fertility treatments a right nationwide. Now, what I think is particularly grotesque is the sponsor of the bill was Tammy Duckworth, who, of course, she used IVF. And I feel like if you're a Republican senator, that's some real fucking dark shit inside your soul to be like, actually, veteran, American hero, mom, I'm going to vote your shit down. But the bill would have expanded access through insurance, giving military members and vets better access. Senator Schumer forced the vote to get Republicans on the record on reproductive care in an election year, which I appreciate. Now, the vote was mostly for show, but the implications are pretty real. So, Erin, simultaneous to this happening, a story that I don't think got enough coverage but is meaningful, one of the country's most influential conservative political groups, the Southern Baptist Church, voted to oppose IVF. The church boasts 13 million members across the country.
Yeah.
So, Erin, I have many questions
Yeah,
for you
we
on
need
this.
to unpack this. It's a lot to unpack.
Let's get into it. How big a deal? A lot of people are looking at this. They're like, okay, so fucking church voted. Who cares? How big a deal is the vote by the Southern Baptists?
It is a big deal. I mean, look,
Right.
the Southern Baptists are not making law, but certainly what they say holds a lot of sway with their members, right?
Right.
And we certainly reported on this at the 19th because it was such a big deal. I mean, honestly, we thought maybe the big news out of, coming out of that Southern Baptist convention was going to be whether or not they were going to allow women pastors,
Right.
or, what, former President Trump was going to say addressing them. By the way, he had some comments around abortion, understanding who his audience was. So, anyway, so according to our reporting, the resolution cites the number of embryos generated in the IVF process, resulting in freezing, stockpiling, and sometimes destroying the excess, and asks families to use other reproductive technologies or to consider adopting children or unwanted frozen embryos. Also, today I learned, that you could adopt frozen embryos. I did not know that.
Who knew?
I did not know that. But certainly there are folks who are in this church who are wrestling with this issue, right? Who, and who may be looking for guidance from their church in terms of what to do if they are wrestling with this. The church said, we grieve alongside couples who have been diagnosed with infertility or who are currently struggling to conceive and affirm their godly desire for children, and yet they still say, that IVF, that they're opposed to IVF. So. It is a pretty big deal, although, like I said, I mean, it's not binding in terms of telling people what they can or can't do.
But here's another question. Why would Southern Baptists want to ban IVF?
I think this does bring up the reminder that abortion is not just a political, I mean, it has been politicized, right? But that for many people, this is a question of faith. And, to the extent that folks that they stand against abortion, if they see, these embryos as life, then, I can see how they end up getting here. Even as this is also a pathway to life for a lot of families that don't have another option.
And here's the thing. So much like everything that's happening, like the vote in the Senate last week, this is not an isolated fringe issue. And for so many people, whether on social media or on the news, who say, Biden's old, Trump's old, it doesn't matter who's president, like so Trump's going to cut taxes, whatever. No. This is all straight out of the Project 2025 playbook, which for anyone who doesn't know, we've definitely talked about the Federalist Society on this podcast before, who are equally nefarious. Project 2025 is a well-funded, they've got like a $22 million budget, organization with a 900-page blueprint for a possible new Trump administration. And we know that he is not creative, and all the people who he wants to work in his administration are abiding this blueprint. They want to be as destructive as possible if Trump becomes president. And the BBC describes Project 2025 as an effort to, quote, restore the family as the centerpiece of American life, dismantle the administrative state, defend the nation's sovereignty and borders, and secure God-given individuals' rights to live freely. Now, Erin, that doesn't sound terrible. I guess doesn't sound that terrible. But why should we all be afraid of 2025? Let's get into what the fuck they're really talking about here.
This is a plan that is going to make certain people in this country less free, less equal. They've already put it out here, months before this election, what the plan is should presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump become president again. Like that this is very much the his agenda. I think we probably will hear more about this at the Republican convention later on this summer.
Sure.
But whether we're talking about abortion. They don't call for a nationwide abortion ban, but certainly they're all about possibly withdrawing mifepristone from the market. Whether we're talking about government.
This
They
is
want
some wild
they want to
shit.
bring DOJ under under direct presidential control.
I
That
think
is
they call
not
it unitary executive theory.
not the way that this
Which
not
is
the way
making
democracy
Trump a
works.
king.
Not
It's
the
making
way,
him a king.
That's not the way democracy works, right? Immigration, once again the wall is back in play. That's proposed in this document. Climate progress on climate out the window under this, and obviously, I mean, we just had a story in the 19th that was talking about how this applies to trans rights, which would be threatened. Yeah.
So I want to talk more about the trans rights, but other things to just float and flag for listeners. One, Trump. Okay. So this is something that's very deep in my DNA. Trump wants to get rid of everybody that he refers to as the deep state. Those people are actually the people responsible for the continuity of government. They are what stabilizes the career employees, Schedule F employees. They're what stabilizes the government and makes the peaceful transition of power a thing. Like they are the people who, they are the nuts and bolts of the government. And he, as part of this, wants to be able to just eliminate their job protections. He's like, you know what? I've had enough of you. I want to get rid of you. And I want to be clear. I actually was like, I'm not sure he can do that. How can he do that? There is actually something called the Presidential Reorganization Act, which gives him the power to do things like that. And also another one of the things that he's talked about, eliminating the Department of Education,
right?
Which many of the people either on his short list or on his list of potential cabinet secretaries all fucking agree with. Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, they're all like, yeah, let's just fucking get rid of that shit. Why not?
That's long been discussed, but it seems like it would be a probability, right? If he were to get back into office. Yeah.
And so Project 2025 also highlights the right's hatred for trans people, as you mentioned. So the 19th did some reporting on this. And you guys talked to LGBTQ plus activists who are fighting back against the things that Project 2025 stands for, which include preventing Medicare and Medicaid funding from reaching hospitals that provide gender-affirming care to trans kids, charge teachers with sex discrimination if they validate kids' gender identities. This is another one. Order federal agencies to stop programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. So, Erin, what did the 19th find out about how these activists are fighting back against this?
Yeah, I mean, thank you again for highlighting this story because, there are a lot of people, a lot of voters. It's summertime, the election is 5-ish months away. People may not necessarily be paying attention to every single thing that's going on. And there are a lot of people that, frankly, are not aware of Project 2025 or what is in it or who, it could potentially impact. And so, a lot of these activists are absolutely paying attention and they are really taking this seriously and are trying to act with a sense of urgency to respond in case the outcome of the election is that President Trump, former President Trump, is elected and Project 2025 is implemented. So it's important for us at the 19th, especially because we are not both sidesing people's dignity or humanity.
Correct.
To really talk about the people that are pushing back against efforts to make people less free and less equal in our democracy. And so what does that mean? Showing, what these LGBTQ plus activists are doing, getting trans people out to vote. It means developing relationships with members of Congress who might support trans people, right? Because that could possibly impact policy. It means starting to talk to states because so much of the attack on trans people in this country we have already seen happening at the state level. So trying to prepare states who might have to start protecting trans constituents to the extent that they can on a more local level, and then also after the laws come the lawsuits. So preparing to get litigious even if Trump wins and does start kind of enacting some of these policies.
God bless. I mean, look, there's a little good news out of the Sunshine State. A federal judge in Florida ruled that gender-affirming care restrictions for both minors and adults are unconstitutional.
Yeah.
thank God, transgender healthcare is officially back in the Sunshine State, the first state in the U.S. that pushed to restrict access to care. So again, like anything that we see, it's like, yes, that's good news, but you still can't take your foot off the gas because they're not stopping with their 2025 agenda.
I mean, forget 2025. This obviously, a lot of this is very much underway right now.
Right.
Even with Republicans out of power in the White House, at this moment, or not necessarily having full control of Congress. There's still a lot of activity happening at the state level and on all fronts, right? Like in state houses, even at the local government level, and also obviously in our legal system. So. Continuing to stay on top of this is really important to us at the 19th, and we're going to certainly continue to watch this Project 2025 conversation, but also kind of overall what is happening with attacks on transgender folks in this country.
Yes, and listeners, if you want to hear more about LGBTQ plus rights as a crucial progressive voting issue, listen to the last episode of Erin's podcast, The Amendment, where she talked to the president of the Human Rights Campaign, Kelly Robinson. Can't recommend it enough. It was a great interview. We'll be talking more about the state of trans rights next week to close out Pride Month, so stay tuned. Okay, I think we have one more news story.
A lot of news going on.
There was so much news, but I can't get enough of you, so I need to cover all of it with you. So last week, I can't wait to hear you talk about this. Last week, Vice President Kamala Harris, who you were the first person to interview her as vice president, right?
Yeah. I think at this point, I think I have the record for most interviews with her, but who's counting?
I'm counting.
Oh, okay.
Because I love it, and I wanted to talk about it. So VP Harris announced that the Biden administration is trying to enact a federal rule that would ban medical debt from credit reports.
Yeah.
Now, you and I were both like, holy shit, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Again, with all the stupid news that we watch on television and is in our feeds, a lot of things like this get overlooked. So reporting, again, from the 19th, shows that this would make applying for a car, home, or business loans much easier for Americans with this type of debt. As a data point, according to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, known as CFPB, a March 2022 study found that 20 million Americans were harboring $88 billion in medical debt. Erin, banning medical debt from credit reports seems like an extremely good and correct thing to do. Who would this impact most?
Surprise, surprise, women, people of color, people with disabilities, people living in low-income communities, like these are the people that are most burdened with medical debt. And so these are the people that would most be helped by this rule. I think that there was one study that was administered by Undo Medical Debt. 27% of surveyed Black women said that they delayed or refused health care because they were scared of collecting medical debt. And don't forget, I mean, you compound this with the Black women who, disproportionately carry the most student loan debt, right? I mean, this is keeping people back. You talk about the wealth gap. This is literally impacting folks in terms of race and gender, in addition to other things, that intersectional issues that are impacting their lives. This medical debt, I think, could be even more impactful than the student debt relief that has happened so far.
I agree. It affects so many people and stops them from so many things that, like, even this is a very small example, but many years ago, I worked at a company that didn't believe in letting you take bathroom breaks. And so I ended up with a kidney infection, which landed me in the ER. Yes. And I had insurance, but that bill was like $2,500.
Yeah.
And I think at the time my salary was $22,500 a year. And so I wasn't paying it. I was just like, I'll get to this someday, right?
Wow.
Like, I'll get to it. And then I got into a car accident and had to get a new car. And I was denied. I found a used car for $5,000 and I was denied a loan. And I was like, how's that possible? And then I looked at my credit score.
And it was the medical debt.
And there were two things that affected me, but the medical debt was key.
Wow.
Key. And I was like, oh my God, well, to pay off the medical debt now, I really can't get a car. Like, what am I going to do?
Right, because if you pay off the medical debt, how are you going to have the money for the car?
And how am I going to get around and do things without a car? Now, I am a lucky person. I had to figure it out, but like, this is a real thing, and I want to highlight it. And there's also one other thing in researching this that I found out that I did not know existed. There have been other federal efforts to curb medical debt. One included the No Surprises Act, which took effect in July 2022. And it requires private health insurers to cover most emergency services, emergency care, and non-emergency in-network services, and prohibits medical providers from billing patients more than in-network cost sharing. I did not know this existed. And I have seen so many stories, specifically, we both love Gayle King. Gail's always doing it on CBS Morning, where they do a story about someone who's getting fleeced by the insurance system to try to like smoke them out and make them take care of it. And this is like a real thing. Like, Erin Ryan and I have talked about, like, if you ever have to go to the emergency, should we just have emergency t-shirts that say, "Are you in my network?" Yeah. So that if something happens and we have to go to the emergency room and we don't have the function of like what's happening on the like what's happening to us in that moment, to be like, hold on, before you treat me, are you in my network?
And see, and this is exactly why I say that this, I think this will be more impactful than the student debt relief, because, I mean, people opt into going to college, you know, maybe they don't intentionally sign up for as much student loan debt as they're getting. I totally get that. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that people don't have control over a medical emergency happening to them.
No.
People don't, you know, if there's a medical event that happens to you that is not your fault, and then you get this huge medical debt as a result. And look, you said $4,400, the average you know, amount of medical debt that people are, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for the average American. So, I mean, you know, it may not seem like a lot of money to some people that have money, but if you don't have money, $4,400 is going to create a lot more problems for you besides that medical event that you had. But like in 2022, there was a YouGov poll that reported that like 66% of Americans support government relief for medical debt. So like we know this is something that is popular with the American people. People have already tried to take action at the state level. You know, in recent years, Texas and Kentucky showed interest in erasing residents' medical debt there. In June of last year, Colorado becomes the first state to prohibit medical debt from being included on residents' credit reports. Similar legislation got passed this year in Connecticut, proposed in New Jersey. You know, earlier this year, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs, who is a Democrat, announced efforts to use $30 million of funding to cancel medical debt for up to 1 million Arizonans. So, I mean, you know, they're taking public comments on this medical debt proposal now at the federal level. They're going to be accepted through August 12th. So, if people, you know, have feelings about that, they should contribute to those public comments. But they expect this rule to be finalized early next year. So hopefully that will provide some relief to some people really, you know, in the coming year.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's a project 2025 that we can get behind.
Yes, that's our project 2025.